Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Lie, the Way, and the War, where we discuss Jesus, His church, and the spiritual battle that surrounds us all. My name is Craig Allison.
My name is Brandon Bonner,
and we'll be your host. Oh, man, you know what? I forgot my pen. I usually have a pen so I can, jot down notes as you talk sometimes.
It's a prop.
It's not really. Oh, here we go. See, I wouldn't be able to think without this pen. Now my brain is engaged.
I feel like you did that intentionally. You staged that.
No, I really didn't. All right, we are moving into a topical theme over the next few weeks. We're going to be talking about some social issues, and today's episode is going to be focused on social justice versus biblical justice. And so the first half of this podcast, you and I are going to talk about the social justice kind of stuff, and then the back half of the podcast, we'll flip the script, so to speak, and talk about biblical justice. And so I'm really interested on your take on this because you are, you're that liberal.
Oh Lord!
Didn't you vote? Didn't you vote for Kamala?
I have no comment.
Kamala, Biden.
Oh boy.
Clinton.
I wouldn't even lie when Clinton got elected.
All right.
Oh,
what is your definition of a social justice warrior?
Social justice warrior. I mean, okay, well, societal definition. I think social justice warrior is someone who kind of serves as an advocate, if you will, a champion, ambassador, liaison for social causes. And so I think in our society, what we're facing right now, that's probably primarily around race, gender, sexual orientation, identity. Could be anything depending on depending on what's in the news and the media outlets.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said when I'm thinking about this, I put it's an emphasis on race, gender identity, power dynamics, and it usually elevates ideology above truth, calm dialogue, and individual responsibility. That may be really biased, but again, I'm looking at this from just the different clips that I've seen, and just the people that claim to be social justice warriors typically display these types of not the kind of person that you're going to be able to sit down and express ideology different to them without them becoming really angry.
Right. Well, and I think that we're at a point, and from a society standpoint, you're seeing kind of the extremes.
Yeah.
Like you're seeing the clips of and on both sides of the aisle, right? Conservative media outlets or progressive media outlets, whatever it might be, you're kind of seeing like the extremes.
Yep.
And I feel like, Craig, just talking to so many different people, I feel like the actual reality is not that extreme. And I do think that I know even you and I have differing opinions on quote unquote social issues. And I know people even in our church have differing opinions on social issues. But I feel like we could and should engage in healthy dialogue. And I have engaged in healthy dialogue. So I feel like that's maybe more representative of what should this dialogue look like. And I don't think that's what's planned for today. But I feel like we're polarized based on the media that we consume, where we think like, okay, this side of the aisle is just crazy, doing these things that are just out there. And, for depending on where you're standing, I think that's not really indicative of what society actually looks like.
And I don't want to come across as like being a talking head to the political talking points on it. Because I think my viewpoint is more nuanced. Now, having said that, when I first started diving into this topic in preparation, the first person that popped into my head was that young girl, Greta Thunberg or something, Thunberg or whatever, and she's always just emotionally a mess, right? And so, to me, that it kind of encapsulates what I view, and I know that's like you said, that's kind of an extreme, but I'd like there to be people who are a little bit more um, willing to sit down, who come from that side of things, but can sit down and have a good rational conversation, and who might actually be open to looking at how we got to this place where things are now, I believe, to be a little bit out of hand, and not looking at this from a biblical standpoint. What does biblical justice look like? Because there are some real big differences that I think that you and I are going to uncover on this. What, you fixing to say something?
Yeah, I think that one thing that we fail to recognize, and something that I've kind of witnessed over the years, especially when you talk to people and get perspective on people that have differing, I don't want to say values, political spectrum, thoughts on social issues. I think at the root of it, I mean, most of the time, I think people are just trying to better the world or better others. Like, I don't think anyone's like trying to destruct America. Now, that could definitely be an agenda item for some, but I think like the general population, you might be on this side of the aisle on this social issue and this side of the aisle on this social issue, and you both maybe have the same outcome. Like, you want a better society, a better community, a better world. And I feel like we lose that because it is, and again, I'm going to go back to social media, and we've talked a lot about this many episodes ago, but just how divisive social media can be, because what gets clicks, right? It's the 30-second clips of, a conservative podcaster just, going on a tirade against a progressive audience, or a progressive political activist going against, having an emotional breakdown. I mean, like, those are the things that generate views, clicks, and engagement, which sells, generates ads, revenue. It's business.
Right.
And it's easy for people that align in those certain circles to kind of serve as an echo chamber. And like, this is great. This person represents the entire left population or the entire right-leaning population, et cetera.
Yeah, I try to keep that in mind. There's also, though, this fundamental narrative, at least today, as we look at what social justice looks like in our current culture. The platform on which it stands is a removal of individual responsibility and a narrative that encapsulates a systemic, societal, at-large issue where the assumption is the political systems of power have manipulated and intentionally, okay, this isn't by accident, intentionally marginalized and suppressed certain ethnicities. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think that the premise of that is flawed. I don't subscribe to that, and many minorities don't subscribe to it. And I'm glad to see a lot more minorities stepping forward and calling that out and saying, we have individual responsibility here. The rising of critical race theory is tied into this, and I believe that's going to show that's going to be a failed experiment because it takes personal responsibility away, and that's not a biblical concept. And anything that strays from the biblical narrative is going to fail. And we've seen that time and time again. So from a foundational standpoint, I think that there's a big difference between the two. And so while it's nuanced, I think fundamentally the two things are not very compatible. Because you said that Jesus, I'm going to throw you under the bus here. You said Jesus was a social justice warrior. But that needs to be understood in a different context, because I don't disagree with you on that. I think, though, that many Christians today who are on the social justice train don't understand exactly why that could be problematic, mm-hmm. and why that's not necessarily a good thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, so pushback?
Yeah, no, I mean, Jesus, okay, so you think about Jesus's message was a lot of things, but what came of it was the gospel, which was for who?
Everybody.
Everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like God, Jesus said, this is Jew, Greek, free, enslaved, like whatever, man, woman.
Yep.
It's for the gospel, the good news is for all man.
Right.
I mean, that, you think about kind of the main social issues, unity, inclusion, inclusiveness, diversity, like all those things that kind of are the main topic media things that there's a large portion of the population that's pushed for that. That's biblical. Now,
Right.
what I think we can't get confused on is Jesus does reprimand lifestyle and demands obedience to him. Right. So it is a message for all. But there is a set of morals, rules, expectations, things that we have to obey and follow so that we can be considered a part of the family, if you will, his family.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit more about that when we get to the idea of biblical justice, because it needs to be, that what you just said needs to be contrasted with where we're at currently, which is to do just the opposite of that. It's to set us up as a divided nation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an oppressor involved, and then there's the people that are being oppressed and marginalized. There's the people that are privileged. There's the people that are not through no fault of their own. There's a system that is put in place that is purposely meant to keep the marginalized people down. Okay, and while there might be pockets of that to paint this huge broad stroke picture, you know, the thing that upsets me is this idea of, you know, and this could be a very controversial thing to say, but does white privilege exist?
Well, I'm not white.
This should be interesting.
I think that the privilege, based on my research, and again, unless I could be proven otherwise, but based on my interpretation and research, I think the privilege is actually a income. It's income based. So I do think that those of society that maybe in the middle class or upper middle class have certain different opportunities than maybe those that are below the poverty line.
Yeah, I honestly, I mean, you know, you look at it, you see a established, okay, so let's take a successful white businessman, owns his own business, and he has kids. His kids definitely have a leg up.
Sure.
Okay, now what they do with that,
right,
obviously is up to them. You see some squander it and some take advantage of it, but you know, the advantage is there for them, but that's not what is being discussed today. Like when the term white privilege is thrown out there, that's inclusive of everybody who's white. And certainly, you know, you look at people that are white who live below the poverty line, and they, you know, what are the opportunities open to them? They're not educated. There's probably no father in the home. You know, it's the stereotypical. I'm saying this, and everybody. I don't want to come out and say it, but everybody kind of knows. You know, that white demographic. But the social justice warriors will even say, yes, just because of the color of their skin, they're privileged. They have a more opportunity than a minority does, and that's the type of narrative that is not only completely filtered through a current cultural lens that is meant to divide and meant to, you know, create these ideas of, yeah, it's not your fault. It's, you know, it's systems. It's the system's fault, and you can't be blamed for it. And so why should you even try? That's not good. That's not a good narrative. And unfortunately, there's a lot of young people that buy into that. And I say all of this to say, because it creates this viewpoint that people are inherently less than, and that is opposed to Imago Dei.
Yep.
That gives them justification to say, oh yeah, that I don't have to rise above. I don't have to I don't have to try to be in the image of God because the system is so against me. I have no opportunity or chance.
Yep.
And I don't think that that's a Christian perspective at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that and I know, like, I'm not blind to the fact that I had privilege. You know, I didn't grow up rich or wealthy by any stretch of the means, but I was given opportunities because I had some stability in the home and income stability, and you know, we weren't below the poverty line. I mean, so I'm not blind to the fact that helped me progress and continue to succeed. And so I think, and again, Craig, I think this is a thing, like the church, the society wants the government, I think, to step in and support that. And I'm not going to get into that. But I think the church has a role, right? Like we're commanded to care for those that are in need.
Yep.
And I mean, we do on a very small scale, but there's just so much need, especially when you think about the Chattanooga community.
Yep. So I want to move into that because that does paint a very different picture of what true social justice looks like, what it should look like for the Christian. And here's why this is why we're talking about this, is because it's been my experience, as limited as that is, it's been my experience that Christians have this idea that biblical justice and today's social justice are the exact same thing. And if you're not on board with the current cultural idea of social justice, which is all the stuff that I've said, then you're not fulfilling the gospel, the New Testament viewpoint of what justice looks like. And nothing can be further than the truth, because the cultural idea of social justice, again, is a attack on Imago Dei. It really is. And that probably, you and I could like talk for 2 hours literally just on that. And maybe we need to at some point. But I want to look then at what actual biblical justice looks like. And I go to Amos as an example. I've got some things on this that point this out. So he's preaching during this time. There's a ton of prosperity. He's under Jeroboam, and so the wealthy in this area are getting richer and richer and richer, and the poor are just being basically neglected completely. And so in Amos chapter 2, verses 6 and 7, it tells us that they're selling the righteous. Sell the righteous for silver and the needy for a pair of sandals. In Amos 5:11 through 12, it's condemning bribery, oppression, and trampling on the poor. In Amos 5:21, 24, God is rejecting their worship because justice is absent. And he says, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. So Amos, the idea here in this Old Testament book is that nobody is stepping forward to advocate for the people who were being abused and neglected. Okay. So as God's people, that's one thing that needs to just pop up immediately. And there's New Testament, to care for the widows and the orphans and that kind of thing. So there's definitely commands for the church to be doing something to be aware of and be doing something for people whose circumstances are different than somebody who has the have-nots. Okay, so before we untangle that, I just want to see where you're at on that first.
Yeah, I mean, I think some good scripture, and I think that we again, like, kind of bystander effect. We just assume someone else is going to take care of it.
Yep.
I think the church is not immune to that. We just assume someone else is going to take care of it. Maybe in our local bodies, but maybe as a larger like the church as a whole. We just assume that it's going to be taken care of, or we use ways to justify why we shouldn't care for the needy. I don't know how they're going to use that money I could give them.
Yeah.
I don't know what choices they're going to make. Yada, yada, yada. I don't know what lifestyles they're living. And honestly, like, it's not on us. That's not on us to make those decisions. And again, I think we try to force conviction. I think we've talked about this in the past. Like, it is not our job to force someone to feel convicted.
Yeah.
It is our job to share the good news, but it is not our job to force conviction, because that's not effective.
Yep. Okay, and so here's the different, the two bookends on this: biblical justice versus modern day justice. So modern day says if you're rich and you're wealthy, you need to give all of that up and give it to the people who don't have it. Okay, because inherently you're wrong and evil because you have money, because you're privileged, because you're white, because you grew up in blessed circumstance, whatever it is, and so you have to give all that. Biblical justice, it never condemns people for being wealthy, or what it does condemn them for is not giving anything, not helping. So to take some of that wealth and help out, that's the idea of biblical justice. And to your point, it's like, well, it's not really our place to question, well, you've got to meet this certain criteria.
Right.
But before. Now, there's smart ways to give money, or to give like the church here at Central, we don't hand out money to people, okay? Because we understand that there's a lot of mental illness. When we're talking about the homeless population, the vast majority are struggling with mental illness, and we know there's a lot of addictions within that population. And if you give them cash, if you give them money, they're going to go spend it on their addiction. But that does not negate us from not helping them. That's not an excuse to not help them. So we're smart in how we go about helping them, working to attach them to the resources that they need, that they will, to provide them for food, because if they're hungry, they need to be fed. I mean, that's a need that needs to be filled. So it's that type of idea that is such a contrast with today's social justice versus biblical justice.
Yeah.
Thoughts? Okay. And then in Micah chapter 6, verse 8, it says, do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. So biblical justice is always going to be rooted in humility, mercy, obedience to God, and not moral superiority. And there's a big difference there when you talk about why a lot of people today are jumping on the bandwagon of social justice. I mean, a lot of it really is to virtue signal. And that's kind of disgusting when you stop and think. Again, going back to social media, it's not funny, but I'm using this word. It's funny, but it's not funny to see how quickly people will change their profile picture or whatever to support whatever social and then like a month later it's something else. And the people that I've gotten into some dialogues with that they just shut me down because they get very defensive is when I say, okay, well, that's good that you're supporting this cause. What are you actually doing to do it? And they're not doing anything. It's to put that out there so people see that, look what a caring person I am.
Sure.
That's not biblical justice. That's arrogance. That's virtue signaling. That's not humility. So there's a big difference there, and I wonder what that looks like for people that are in the church that may be prone to jumping on board with what current culture says justice looks like.
Well, just a different thought. I feel like we, as Christians, can virtue signal as well. Like,
that's what I'm saying, that
yeah.
we do that.
Yeah, like on going to Sunday morning, and that's it. Like, you're a Sunday morning Christian, and everything else, every other day, is not representative of that. That, in a way, is virtue signaling. Sure. Like, you're coming to church on Sunday because you have some sort of obligation. It's socially acceptable. Maybe your friends are there, but you're not really in it. Like, there's just so many reasons. I mean, that's virtue signaling.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's here is that tricky kind of area where we have a tendency as church members to like point fingers, but we don't necessarily want to analyze that particular aspect
Right.
of it. And for those that are listening, I mean, I don't want this to come across like I'm on a soapbox or anything. I'm just saying, evaluate. My sermon last week was, examine your ways. That self-reflection on what does my actions look like Monday through Saturday when I come in and I talk to people on Sunday mornings about, who I am as a Christian. Does that match the things that you're doing Monday through Saturday?
Yep.
And a lot of times what I hear is the people that, and I know this is a very limited perspective here, and I'm not painting with a broad stroke, but I've run across more than a few Christians who are pretty quick to put those social justice profile pictures up like they're supporting whatever this, cause is. A lot of times it's on the liberal side of things, and it's, they haven't done a whole lot of research on it. And that's all it is. They're not actually doing anything. They're putting that out there. And I would challenge them to evaluate and see, what does that look like against some of the scriptures that are brought forth, especially this one that I just read in Micah chapter 6, verse 9, or James chapter 2, 1 through 9 talks about not showing any partiality. God rejects favoritism in every direction, calls us to treat every person with equal dignity because all bear his image. To your point, there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, so we are supposed to be unified in our approach to the world. So,
yeah, and this is something that I've really thought about recently. There's this book that I have been reading, and some of the folks that I think our church are starting to read it. Maybe you're starting to read Theo of Golden.
I've got it. I haven't started reading it yet.
So, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a scene in the book where he encounters a woman that's homeless, appears to have some mental health issues, and they have a conversation, whatever. And then he's at church on Sunday, and she comes in to the church. And, I mean, just the response from the church is very, like, negative, like, what is she doing here? Well, this person's going to disrupt and take away from our worship and service. And kind of some of the things that I got from that, I was like, that's maybe not our church, but that's how a lot of churches could respond. Like, someone walks in that doesn't, quote unquote, look like they should be there.
Yep.
Dress differently, acts differently, whatever it might be. Would we pass that test?
Yeah.
Are we following what James is telling us in chapter 2 to show no partiality?
Yeah.
And that's tough. And I think that's ultimately what most of humankind craves, right? Community, to be a part of something. And so a lot of these like big social movements where people are posting things on their social media, I think it's really derived from people want community and to see themselves represented in a community. And the church should be at the forefront of that, right? Because we know, like, Christ came and died for all, not just for a small subset of people. He died for all of us. And so it's on us as Christians to share that news. Now, obviously, there's spiritual maturity and spiritual obedience and all those things. And I'm not saying that that's not important. Like, that's the that's the point here. But sharing that this is the message that Jesus preached.
Yeah, I'm thinking about when you said, would churches pass the test? When you said that, several individuals that come here to Central immediately popped in my mind. And I am so relieved and happy to say that, because I've been part of congregations that would have done just what you said, and we don't do that here at Central. Now, maybe it's because we are a downtown church and we deal with that type of population. Every day I'm giving out food to people that stop by, and Robin, the church administrator, is, or whoever else is here. We have this program that we feed the homeless here. And I love that. And I love the fact that we are looking at more ways to help, to utilize this building that God has blessed us with. And I thought about this in terms of, if every single church in Chattanooga saw it as their God-given responsibility to help those that are in need, to really put their money where their mouth is, we would not have a homeless. It wouldn't exist.
Yep.
And the government would not have to step in.
Absolutely.
And do that. And so I think that, as we close out this episode, that's the challenge. If you want to have biblical justice, if you want to be the arm, if you will, of what biblical justice truly looks like, you're that catalyst within your church who pushes your church leaders to re-examine how you use your resources, how you use your building. It's sad that we've got all these fantastic buildings and we pour all this money into these buildings, and they literally sit empty the vast majority of the week. Yeah. And so re-envision, what might that look like if we repurposed our buildings to serve people that were in need? Mm-hmm. I would hesitate to guess that there's a whole lot of things we could be doing. Some churches have the capacity to put in washers and dryers and have people serve as ministry, come in and cook some meals, maybe two times a week. And people that need it come in and they get a meal and they get their clothes washed and they go out and they feel better about themselves because they don't stink and they have clean clothes on their back and they have food in their belly. That's biblical justice. That's helping people who have less than, that are less fortunate.
Yep.
That's my soapbox speech.
Well, and I think too, it's important to note, like, it just isn't just the homeless population. That's for us, I think in Chattanooga, that is a large population here, mm-hmm. but it's our college ministry, it's the missions that we have overseas, it's it's people that live different lifestyles than us. These things. James didn't say this because we are naturally beings that are not partial. Like we are. We like to hang out with people that think like us, that may look like us, that act like us, have similar interests.
Yep.
And so it's not easy to show no partiality.
Yep.
Like that's why it's here. It's like, don't be partial. It's easy to do. And as Christians, we're commanded to help all those that are marginalized, that are struggling with homelessness or mental illness, or don't agree with us on the political spectrum, or maybe don't even agree with us on the religious spectrum. But like, our job is to educate, share the good news about Jesus, and reveal the great message that he offered us.
Yep. Good stuff. Shout out to our sponsors as we close out this episode. Flaming Rooster.
I brought Flaming Rooster.
You did. Listen, that was so kind of you to bring dinner in. So who knows? Maybe they will sponsor us.
That'd be pretty
Shout
cool.
out to Flaming Rooster. It's a great chicken. Ministry League. Download that app. You can probably see it on your screen there. It's a great app to use. We've got a podcast out of here each Monday or Tuesday is when it gets aired, but it's a recap of the lesson on Sunday called After Sunday, Digging Deeper. Also to Central Church of Christ, our home congregation here, who sponsors us, provides this studio, and it's so great. We're doing a lot of stuff out of this studio now, and Parker's got that lined up. So just shout out to all of that. That's great stuff going on. Until our next episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, be kind to one another, love one another. Remember, the Creator of the universe loves you so much that He gave up His only Son for you. Have a blessed day.